is they can have people snouts that are short. And so in order to not get that convoluted or demented, you have to know how bad a demented thing can get, that you're gonna have the FBI and the FDA investigating everything and then allowing to pass anything. What would the FDA be passing that's convoluted is these drug companies making something that no one voted on. If they would be going door to door and asking everyone, are you okay with this in it, with that in it, and explaining the whole process, that would be something that would be ideal. Instead, you have a political group getting mandates on everything, and more demented than that is the FBI investigating hate groups. This in terms with an LGBT community is something where they're trying to emulate what they think is perfect. Is the FBI investigating hate groups, and even though if it isn't, is the FBI investigating hate groups, that's up for them to understand an identity crisis. So something as demented as trying to be something that you aren't when it comes to a definite amount of cells in your body. It's understood that when you lose brain cells, you never get them back because there's a certain amount that are made, and then when you lose them in your brain, they don't rejuvenate. Other organs in your body do rejuvenate cells, and that's just like how stars in the universe will cook up and explode out a certain amount of elements. There are still more stars yet to be born and blown out more elements, but there's only a definite amount of stars that'll ever be alive in the universe to do that. And as of right now, we're in the era of the stars, so that's why we got lucky. But just as all the stars will eventually burn out, other than your brain never producing a certain amount of cells, other regions of your body slowly will be falling under the category of unable to rejuvenate more cells. And the more that happens, that's what's called death and dying. And in order to combat that, you have to know how to be plentiful and fruitful. And with that, what you're born with, if the more that you try and alter that, it's as though you're adding in more GMO into an ingredient of a seedling that didn't have that originally. The more GMO you add into a seedling that didn't have it originally, you're winning the war of identity because you're choosing what it could be, and it works more than likely. However, you're losing the war of life, where it's gonna grow into something that'll be half bred, because it will be inbred. When a hermaphrodite is born, they're born of two different male and female, and that's something where the LGBT community would say this is why we need to choose our male or female for ourselves, is because that's one problem that life has. However, just because a hermaphrodite is born a male and a female doesn't mean that they have to engulf themselves into a life of sexuality, especially when there's more work that can be done easier. Working smarter is not harder. It's just I don't think that they know how easy life can be other than LGBT. Is they're choosing that hill to die on without knowing the grass is greener on the other side, because they don't know of anything better. And that's why what's so important about your cells is it holds your genes. And the more stress in your life, you get bent out of shape more and more. And I'm not saying that's bad. You know, when someone's down on the ground and you're kicking them, it's just as like if you have wheels and they're bent and you're driving over bumpy roads, it's gonna be smoother, especially if you find a rhythm of harmony in that drive, as opposed to wheels that are straight will have a rougher ride on that bumpy road. To watch them. And when it comes to the elites, I don't think they care about what part of your body's rejuvenate, as long as they can have people brainwashed. The problem's breathing, and they sound like they have asthma, and this is probably because their fertility had dropped immensely, and people think that they should stop being bred because their quality of life isn't good and they can't procreate with each other. I don't know if that's the right word. They can't breed with each other because I guess they're not healthy, and so they have to be born through test tube puppies. There's one for you. All the bulldogs with the short snouts, and so they can't breathe as well because their sinuses are so small. And people are saying that they want these dogs to go extinct because they're too hard to keep alive. And so I'm thinking, okay, so those dogs might be gone in the next 10 years. What is the next dog that's least healthy other than them? Are the elite breeders who have a say in which dogs should be X'd out? Is that how like an elites would view what should we manufacture with the drug companies to cater to the ability for people who eat GMO food should be sought up as? That would blow every fuse inside your whole house. This would be a representation of a laser guided symmetry. And this is one way of not taking an entire embodiment for granted. All the elements can change infinitely amount of times, but how great are the vessels that house those elements is a quality of life that can never be taken for granted. But when you're taking that with a grain of salt, you've got to know the things making up the elements are definite amounts. There's only a certain amount of atoms that are on planet Earth, and those are what constitutes for cells. Cells are a very definite amount, but they can be rejuvenated. So the amount of rejuvenating the cells inside a body is a certain power amount. That power amount can be denoted by dimensional analysis. How tight a knot is going to show how much it's able to be of an age. When someone says you've got the eyes of like an 80-year-old, that means that everything is going to look less sharp and you'll have a lower vision. Like a 1720 vision is lower than a 2020 vision. But to the degree of it being an old man, we don't have like a certain scale yet for a dimensional analysis. So that's why the quality of life is a mixed bag when it comes to the amount of how much rejuvenating power a thing has. If you're someone who's spineless, that means that you're always turning your back And if you turn your back on God, what that might look like in the end if God turns his back on you. And when getting back on the horse, if you've broken a bone, it could make you hesitant, and hesitating means death. So I mean, this is what the elites are doing, and anyone who isn't an elite hopping on a bandwagon to make it seem as though they are. If you can predict the future, you can get rich. And how easy is it predicting the future if you just water down everything and then sugarcoat it, and it looks like it's somewhat of a future that you can read. And blue cities have people getting ran over, and then the car behind them running over the person who just got ran over, because they don't care about people's lives, because they see that the quality of life is so bad. And this is how I feel like when roads and sidewalks aren't salted down or cared for properly. It's just like giant bumpy roads everywhere. And what a bumpy road can look like inside of a plant is a GMO doing horrific attributes, thing like making all your taste buds be exploded out so you don't have any taste, or having you contract even though you have never done something that would make you have such a thing. And politics, they handle the future. And so what the future heir might see nowadays is that people are losing their taste.